up to today. Yeah. So it's a clear principal-agent problem. How do you get through principal-agent problems? There are many, many game theoretical studies to show that you have to align the interests of the principal as closely as possible to that of the agent. So, if you misdiagnose me with something, I will sue your ass off. Yeah? That is a clear alignment of my interests with yours as a doctor. So, moving on. Here's governance remuneration. Maybe we paid the bankers a bit too much. The wave of corporate scandals that began in late 2001 shook confidence in the performance of public company boards, drew attention to potential flaws in their executive compensation packages. There is now recognition that many boards have employed compensation arrangements that do not service shareholders' interests. There is still substantial disagreement about the scope of such problems and, not surprisingly, how to address them. This is Lawrence Bebchuk and Fried, a book they wrote in 2004. And Bebchuk and Fried are not lefty kind of sandal-wearing people. They're professors of law at Harvard, and they're corporate pay specialists. Their argument is that it doesn't matter how much you pay somebody. It matters how you pay them. You can pay somebody $100 million a year. If you pay them in the correct manner, then you're probably going to align their interests in as close a manner as possible. Now, I'm not so certain of that. I'm not so certain that. I spent some time in a couple of footnotes in the book chapter ranting away about some of the corporate remuneration packages that we see in the States. Some of it is a bit mental. For example, and I love telling this one, the CEO who got a private jet for himself, a private jet for his wife, and I love this, free first-class flights forever for his mother-in-law. Love it! Love it! Who's that good? Who's that good? You know? I just love it. So, Solidigger. Relax. Okay. Corporate remuneration policies have been decried for 300 years. It's not the case, and we were talking earlier about the Sensi bubble. It's not the case that you can simply fire every banker in Ireland, although I would like to see some of them go. And not for any populist reason, let me add. Not for any vote getting or media pleasing reason. It's because it's the cheapest signal to send to the market. Simply that. It's the cheapest signal to say, look, we're serious. We're really serious about this. We got rid of him, and oh yeah, the 8 people below it. Because yeah, 5 out of 6 CEOs changed, that's fine, but if the composition of the boards remain the same and the middle management, the people who actually make the decisions, remain the same, then maybe you haven't affected that much real change. So, Solidigger, relax. Nothing is going to change too much, but we do need to change certain things. For example, we have to stop crazy lending practices from happening again. So here's just one chart. Origination and issuance of CDOs by the FDIC. Yeah? Just crazy, explosive behavior that would never, ever have been merited, apart from the fact that it made a lot of sense when you were here to do it. Yeah? So, here are my final slide, and I'll finish on this. How should we think about things? The first is that Ireland is engaged in a process of structural change. I've argued this many times in Limerick, that we have experienced a series of more or less similar events. In 1978, the large electronics platform Inca leaves, 1,400 jobs are let go. In 1998, Krups leaves, 1,900 jobs are let go. In 2009, Dell leaves, 1,900 jobs let go. We've an experience in Limerick of having light manufacturing with one big employer, a macroeconomic condition change, and they're gone. Yeah. So maybe we shouldn't do that again. You know, maybe we should speed up that structural change and say, no, look, we're going to close the Dell plant down and use it for something else. For example, training up people. You could, and I've argued this many times, sponsored focused job creation programs. I had an article in the Sunday Times about 2 weeks ago about this. I got some hate mail actually about it. I've argued just for the laugh, to be honest. It's not really serious. But I've argued that one thing we should think about is maybe doubling the dough. Just double the dough. Because people who are unemployed tend to spend a huge amount of what they earn from the dough on consumption choices. We've got a complete collapse in domestic demand. So why not just double the dough? You'll get yourself out of a hole pretty quickly. Or you could have a basic income program. There's many of these ideas have come to the fore. But job creation programs, I find, are quite useful. I know many other commentators, for example, Professor Carl Whelan and UCD, are pretty anti, slightly anti job creation programs. I'm not. I think they have many other ancillary benefits that simply aren't costed in a dead weight analysis. For example, social problems. Unemployment generates huge social problems, and they're simply never costed. Nationalised wayward banks, I think after the June the 5th elections, that's going to happen anyway. I think probably 2 or 3 more months, we'll see a bit more of that. Less pro-cyclical leveraging. I think we can simply do that by just tightening the rules. Reduce 80 kilometers an hour to 60. You know, you cannot lend more than 150% of what you got. Which says, and people are like, oh my God, that's fairly strict. You can't lend more than you've got on deposit, or more than you can get. You know, it just seems like pretty obvious things. This is a big one, and something I'm thinking a lot of. Why don't we just cede regulatory control to the EU? The real politic in Ireland is that most of the decisions are made by a very, very small group of people, all of whom know each other quite intimately from school, college, whatever. I'm not likely to slap the cuffs on you if you're my brother-in-law. I have to worry about my wife talking to me on Christmas Day, or, well, you put Steve in jail, you know. That's not going to happen. You can see it happening in the States because it's so big. Why not just cede regulatory control of this to the EU? You know? One might argue that that would make it even easier to evade the rules. But, I don't know. Encourage transparency, that's a bit like saying, and a pony for everyone, but, you know, encourage transparency. Change the rule. And fun. That's fine. That's it. Okay, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I think, yeah, we've got loads of time for comments, questions, and broad fruit.
I mean, your first point there, speed up structural change. What have you in mind there? I mean, what are the one or two
really what I'm thinking about here is a very, very focused redesign of certain parts of FOSS. So right now, FOSS is set up to put people through 2- and 3-year basic courses. I'd like to see half of FOSS chopped up and put into very focused things like green jobs. So I don't mean green jobs in the broader sense. I mean, here's how to install a solar panel. Here's how to install green insulation. Here's how to do these small things, which have a market already. We know that the market exists. We're creating labour supply for a demand that exists already. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Finally, I'd like to see, or rather, there are hundreds of thousands of men who are now unemployed who don't have a leaving cert. I really would like to see VEC programs hived off to actually bring these guys back in, because they're going to take 2 to 3 to 4, 5 years to bring them up to leaving cert level, even, let alone college. So from that point of view, I'd like to see that happening as well. It's not the case that everybody who was a plumber is now going to be a computer operator, but it would help a lot. That's the difference.
How would you go about stopping leverage from coming into the market in such a way that it has, or that it did in the UK in the 90s, or in many of the crashes in the past?
Well, I didn't talk about this in the talk, but in the paper I argued that what we need is to understand the types of people that do both jobs. The regulator is a civil servant, and the banker is not. The banker is under huge pressure to produce financial innovations all the time, because they have to. It's the nature of the job. The regulator, not so much. It doesn't matter if the regulator doesn't come in until 10 o'clock in the morning. It was obvious that he didn't, right? Actually. But so you know that the two types of actors in the system that matter are different. So what should you do? You should task the regulator to destroy the bank. He shouldn't try to calm the bank down. He should spend all of his time actively trying to run the bank out of business. It's a kind of a nerdy game theoretical thing. But he should actively push against the bank, to the point that the bank has to devote enough of its resources to actually meeting the regulator's demands that it doesn't have time to come up with the financial innovations that generate the increased leverage that you're talking about.
Isn't that what Enron did? Just run everything offshore, do it somewhere else?
You can do it somewhere else, but that's where the EU regulation will come in. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying you do it everywhere, or that